there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
I may not be a millionaire. I may not have a brand new Frigidaire. My clothes ain't all fancy, and my car ain't brand new, but there is joy in my
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Joy in My House, inspirational reality radio show with a touch of recovery. A reality radio show where nothing is left unsaid and no one is insignificant who says it. I'm joined here by my guest co-host, Van Eric, and my producer.
Yes,
Welcome to
indeed.
another day of Joy in My House.
Yes, indeedy, man. I am hyped and excited about today. Woo!
Well, I want to thank you all out there who are listening and viewing for being a part of the joy that we have in our house. If you're tuning in with us right now, we want to thank you for being a part of that joy. I want you to know that you can engage with us, link up with us on Facebook /Joy in My House. You can also find us on Twitter.com /Joy in My House. Now, if you're listening to us on any mobile device, know that you can stream us live and watch the audio and video as well on Ustream.tv, or you can find us on iTunes genre R&B. Well, we had an amazing show for you last week with our guest Raquel Hearing, Rocky Raquel, and her new CD Loud for Christ.
Yeah,
What a great
man.
show last week.
I mean, she put it in, man. She got it in really good, man. I'll tell you, Joel, you be bringing some very talented people to the table, man. It's amazing.
It really is, but it's really God's work. You know, for what I always say for the show, this is just a platform for us to spread the work that God has done in us and continues to do, and for us to hopefully bring some hope and inspiration to you out there who are listening and viewing. Me and Van here, we're privileged to sit down with these amazing
man.
guests
Yes, it
week
is,
after
man.
week.
God is so good to me, man. Since I've been involved with LA Talk Live, it's like, man, it's a joy. That's the joy in my house. You know, the fact that he has offered me this opportunity to have a format to bring people together every day, and there you go.
And that's what we talk about on the show. The premise of the show is the joy that we have in the midst of our struggles, our challenges, or in the midst of our praise. You know, it's a lot harder to be happy and joyful when things are going tough. But if you're out there listening and viewing, I want you to find some hope, some inspiration, a light at the end of the tunnel with some of these amazing guests and these transforming stories, because I know that they bring me a little bit of hope, a little bit of inspiration every week. And sometimes that's all I need to get me through the next day or the next week.
Yes, indeedy. Yes.
Well, we have a great show for you today. We have an in-studio guest by the name of Rebecca Cruz. If you don't know who she is, you need to, because you've probably seen her on BET on the reality hit series, The Cruzes. She is married to Terry Crews, and she's an actor and a producer as well. But not only that, she's a singer, and she'll be dropping her new single, Can I Stay? And the premise is being in the presence, staying in the presence of God's grace. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Joy in My House. When we come back, we're going to be live in the studio here on LA Talk Live on Joy in My House with Rebecca Cruz. You're not going to want to miss. Stay tuned.
How can I forget you? Where did the sweetness go, Lord? Have I fallen from your hand? Am I so far from you, Lord? Is my life in your plan? Where can I run when I feel all alone? Do my words truly reach you high on your throne? Where did your presence go, Lord? Have you pushed me far from your mind? Where did our laughter go? Will you smile on me one more time? How can I hope when
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Joy in My House, inspirational reality radio show with a touch of recovery. I'm in studio right now with Rebecca Cruz. Rebecca, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on. If you don't know who Rebecca Cruz is, she is the reality star to the Cruzes, married to actor and comedian Terry Crews. That's just a small part of your accolades because you are actually a songwriter, producer, arranger.
Yes,
You got quite
absolutely.
a bit of
Yes, I had a life before I got married and had all those kids.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we always like to talk about how we met. I met you through our producer, Van Eric, and one of the owners here at the station of LA Talk Live. He got me linked up with your publicist and said that you were ready to come out and start doing some promotion for your new single.
Yes, I'm very excited about this song. It's the first of many to come, but like you said, I've been doing music a long time and just felt this was the right time for me to launch my music career. So I'm really happy about it.
Well, we got to ask this because of your busy schedule, and we're going to get to your story.
Yes.
But how is it being a mother, a wife, a musician, a reality star? I mean, there's a lot of people out there who really do multiple jobs. Now, you're not doing multiple jobs. You're raising multiple careers,
yes.
families, relationships.
Mm-hmm.
How is that for you?
Well, I say it's just like every mom, every mother that works, and even moms that stay home work all day.
Oh, yes.
When I was a housewife, I did more work than I than I do now, checking in at an office. It's a much harder day being home with your kids all day. But just like anybody in my profession, you do wear many hats. Often even whether you call yourself a writer, producer, you still tend to do more than one thing on that record, and so just a multiplicity of talents that come together to make a person. I'm sure just like yourself, you don't only do radio. I'm sure there are other things that you do well. So we often just have to balance and shift the hat. I have to be mommy at a certain point in the day, and then I have to take off mommy and go in that studio and bust out that song. And when we get that done and do our absolute best, then mommy has to put her hat back on and go buy dinner or go make dinner. And, and I have help. Praise the Lord. I finally did get some help once my 5th child was born.
Wow. Well, congratulations.
And so
on that.
thank God for my little Amber. If you're listening, Amber, I love you. She's our helper at the house, and she's a great caregiver. And thank God for her. Every mother should have help.
Oh, yeah.
That's my belief.
If you're just tuning in with us, I want to thank you for being a part of the joy that we have in our house. We have our in-studio guest, Rebecca Cruz. We're going to get into her story, and I hope that you are as privileged as I am to hear this testimony and hopefully bring some hope and inspiration to maybe your lives. It's not a straight shot, and I think that's important to say because I think a lot of people think you go from 0 to 60 in 2.5, and now you're a star. And
not unless you're in a Maserati. Life's not a Maserati.
That's right. So let's get into that. You grew up in Indiana. Tell us what it was like growing up in Indiana.
Well, it was quiet until about high school. I grew up in a town called Gary, Indiana, which was made famous by the Music Man for a popular song that they inserted into the regular chorus of that musical. And also by the fact that one of the world's greatest entertainers came from my hometown, Mr. Michael Jackson, as well as the rest of his family. LaToya and Janet and all the five and Randy and everyone came from Gary. And there are lots of other celebrities that have come from Gary. Denise Williams is from Gary.
Oh, that I did.
They say Carl Malden is from Gary, Indiana. And who else? And Rebecca.
I was going to say, now Rebecca Cruz.
Yes.
Well, tell us, at a very young age, you started singing. About what age?
Gosh, well, from my heart and in my shower, I started singing about 5 or 6 years old, and always had the ability to make a song out of nothing. I could sing about riding on the boat or playing in the car or your hair looks funny like that. I'd walk around the house, your hair looks funny like that, and I'd make a song up. So when I was about 7, maybe, I began playing the piano just kind of on a whim. I was listening to a TV commercial or watching something, and I began imitating the sound of the music on the piano.
So you had an ear for music.
I
at a
had
young
an ear,
age.
yes.
Oh.
And by this point, and we'll talk about that a little bit, my father had passed away, my initial father, biological dad. And so my stepdad, who was also a musician, sat down and said, that girl has talent. We got to get her a keyboard. And so he started putting me in lessons, and I began singing, songwriting, performing, just on into the rest of my adulthood.
Now, did anyone else in your family, you did mention your father, have a voice?
Absolutely. My mother was a trained coloratura soprano.
Wow.
And a black woman in the 40s singing, arias was not uncommon. There were some others, Marian Anderson and Leontine Price. And I think my mother aspired to be the next great female opera singer. And she didn't have money for lessons, I guess, so she worked little odd jobs to keep herself in the know. And then she got married and had kids, and I think she gave it all up.
Well, how interesting, because your life kind of started taking the same path.
Absolutely.
But because of your submission to God, and we're going to get to that, God didn't give up, didn't
let me give up.
Didn't let you give up.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Well, you at a young age were a performer.
I was always dancing or singing or doing something in front of people. I went to dance theater classes. I took ballet. I was on the cheer squad. Anything that put me up on a stage, I was doing. I entered talent shows. Our city has a lot of talent. And we would have this big annual West Side talent show. West Side was a high school, and it had the biggest auditorium in the city. Like even professional acts came to this high school because of their great theater setup. And I remember I watched like Prince and like Denise Williams perform at this high school. And we would have open call. And every year, man, me and my girlfriends, either we would get up and dance, so like Parliament Funkadelic, or we would sing something from The Wiz, which was the big popular movie at the time, or who knows what, whoever was hot on R&B radio.
So God put it in your heart at a very young age
Yes.
to be a performer.
Yes, very much
to be
so.
an entertainer.
Yes.
Because you performed at churches, you
Yes.
did musical theater in junior high school. Tell us about the musical theater in junior high school, because this was not just your average musical theater. You actually had to audition to become a part of this.
Absolutely. It was a GATE, or as we say, a gifted and talented program in our local school system. And you had to be auditioned, and you had to do 2 out of 3 talents to get into this program. So you had to sing and dance, you had to dance and act, or act and sing, but you had to do 2 or 3. So I performed in my local talent shows and in my school and my high school, but I had never done an audition. Like in most talent shows, they'll almost let anybody in.
Right.
But in this instance, I was on the
felt the
line.
pressure.
Yeah, boy, I would have felt the pressure. And I had some training, but I wouldn't have called myself the most trained vocalist or the most trained performer. But man, I got up there and sang my little heart out, and I danced around, twirled around. I don't know what I did. I bet it was a hot mess. But they liked me, and they cast me in their project. And so for 4 years straight, I was a part of this very elite group of people who now many of them are in entertainment and play on
what a
records
blessing.
and sing on Broadway and all kinds of things.
And that was in junior high.
And through high school,
And
actually.
through high school.
Yes.
But in high school, you also started a gospel band,
Yeah.
and you were part of an all-female
Yes.
group as
R&B
well.
band. Yes. Like I said, I was over involved. I was trying to stay out, I guess. I had a niche for gospel music. Now, I did not come from a gospel singing family, but I fell in love with gospel after hearing it on the radio. So I began to follow these groups like Walter Hawkins and the Hawkins family, Tremaine Hawkins, the Barrett sisters, and Andre Crouch. And
So you really had a pedigree of people that you really looked up to.
Absolutely. And I learned fast, and I could tell you what chord they were playing and how to do it. And so I took on the responsibility of directing my high school's gospel choir. And I was a freshman, sophomore, and young kid, but I could pick up these songs and teach these parts. And then I got my own group, and then we went out and did churches, toured churches. And that's how we ended up at the state fair. I mentioned we did the Indiana State
So
Fair.
you did the Indiana State Fair. Now, when you're talking about being in this city, and there's a lot of talent there, and you guys get to perform in the state fair, which I must assume it's a big honor and a big deal.
Absolutely. It was a very big deal, very big, long ride down to Indianapolis in our little car. And it wasn't, I think, as much about who was there, but that this represented the whole state.
Right.
And that we could perform in front of these people. was a great challenge, but it was also great honor. And, one thing, and I seem to recall we had some sound issues that day, so we were real nervous. But we did what we do, and I was on the piano, and my little best girlfriend was the lead singer, and she sang the lead, and we tore it up the best we could, Little Gary, Indiana, we wore our little white dresses, and, we tried to be pro,
But I think that's what it's about. If you're out there listening and viewing, we all come from humble beginnings, but it's
Yes.
us continuing to strive for that perfection. We will never be perfect, but we
Right.
strive for it. And those bumps on the roads are what makes us. I think a lot of people, or myself, I don't want to talk for anybody else, but the minute I get a little hiccup, it's like, oh, I'm done. I took a hard
yes.
hit. It's getting up that's really difficult.
It's so true. It is so true. If I could tell you all the obstacles I have faced to be where I am today, releasing a single. Oh my God. I started this journey as an adult probably 10 years ago.
Wow.
10 years ago, after my third or my fourth baby, I just felt that call of God, like, go make a record, go, perform, join a band, start a band, do something with your gift. And so I went out on auditions. I did a couple demos that never got heard, and I did this and that. And, and I had people promise me things and then not really fulfill them. And so it was hurtful. And I did give up. I really did. I laid down and died about it several times. And I'm resurrected today because I just could not, I don't know, I could not leave the idea that this was something I had to live before I died.
Well, let's talk about your faith. Your grandfather was a minister and preacher.
Yes.
Tell us what it was growing up with your grandfather, your father, and your stepdad.
Yeah.
Were you a church-going family?
We were, but I would call us Easter, Christmas, and maybe a little in between that. We did not go every Sunday all the time. I would say there were seasonal
Right.
appearances, right? And then we might have a period we'd go every week for a while and then kind of not. But we were not what I'd call a practicing Christian family. I don't know that we...
And I think it's important
yeah.
to say that because I was raised Catholic. And the same thing. I went to Catholic elementary school, Catholic junior high, and they not forced us, you either had to go to service or then you'd make a donation because you were maybe too busy. I don't know how that really
Right, you had
worked.
to give God his tip, right?
So we would show up every once in a while. Then we had seasons that we started really attending church, and then after a while we did not.
Right.
So it was a seasonal thing, and I think it's important to say that because it's not a straight shot. Like we keep saying on the show, we go through these seasons, and God will meet us right where we're at, no matter
Yes.
when we're at. So I wanted to talk about that because you had some challenges with your father. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I call him my original father, but my dad, who was raised in a ministry family, his parents were pastors, he passed away at a very tragically young age of 29. And he was also a singer, songwriter, musician, multi-instrumentalist, multi-talented individual who had an ability to write and produce and, all kinds of great things. And he had a gig one night and got in the car with a friend, and they crashed into I want to say it's like I think it was involving like the train, the light guards near the train. And he crashed and he died. The driver did not die. And
But how old were you?
I
about
was
this?
6.
You were 6.
And so I was, of course, ultimately thrown into a world of caregivers and nannies and this and that while Mom went to find steady work. And I'm the oldest of 3. So, of course, I'm
So
like the mama, too,
You
now
had
at
to
this
become
point.
the mom raising your younger siblings.
Absolutely. I was the big sister and had to act like it, had to grow up fast.
Wow. Well, although you weren't a troublemaker, you
Right.
also had kind of your things with your stepfather.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, my stepdad came into our lives at a young age. I was maybe 8 or 9 when they met, and they dated and so on. And I think it carried on. And next thing I know, we were all getting married. I was in the wedding with my little dress, and my sister and we were all like, not so sure we wanted Mom to get married. I mean, you know how that is. You want your mom to yourself.
Right.
But Dad was a good man. He loved us. He took care of us. He was a good provider and a good musician, a good caregiver in many ways. But what we discovered later on into the marriage is that he had issues with alcohol. And so that created some abusive, what I would say, past situations where he was angry, he was violent, maybe throw something or, hit us too hard in a spanking and, and lose his temper, which of course makes you unstable, fearful,
Right.
not willing to work. Like he'd say, do your chores. We would be rebellious, and he wanted us to have discipline. He wanted us to be a little more grounded. And we were rebellious to the point where I'm sure we frustrated him tremendously because we're like, you're not our dad,
Right, right.
Bless his heart. And so there were some struggles for him. But then added to that were his own personal struggles.
Right.
And so there was a divorce. And I went through that process with my mom. And it was very hard on her.
So,
and
turn hard on you.
And hard on us. And we loved him. But at the same time, we were glad that there was a modicum of peace now because of that issue not being at least present in our home. And I want to say I have a relationship with my stepdad still to this day. He married me off when I got married to my husband. And I talk with him and chat with him. He still sends me videos of great jazz artists. He was a jazz musician. And we have our little connection, And
Well,
this
that is amazing.
This is many years after their divorce.
But this is amazing that you still have that heart of forgiveness,
Yes.
that heart of grace, which is what God shows us.
Yes. And as that was transpiring in my life, immediately, it's funny, you look back and you see the hand of God. There was a great emphasis on forgiveness in my life at that time. I can recall people saying to me, well, you need to forgive your dad and you don't need to have hatred toward him.
Right.
And I was in the beginnings of that process of seeking Christianity in a deeper way. And so it seemed as though everywhere I looked, people were saying it and talking about it. And it just got ingrained in my heart that I had to live without hating him. And so that was my first big lesson, I say, as a young Christian.
And we're going to talk about that because you did have a foundation of God in your life, thanks
Yeah.
to your family. But you kind of lacked the personal relationship to Jesus. Elaborate on that.
Well, when I got into high school, I discovered there was a difference between being a Christian and being saved. Okay, now I know terminology, that may just be a matter of terminology. But I was in a group of people who lived in church. These are kids who grew up in church, raised in church, baptized in church, didn't go to parties, went to, clubs at church. Like we go
Right.
into, what's the youth, there's a name for it, the Youth for Christ and these kind of things. YYP, Young People's Praise. And they had youth groups. And like my church didn't have stuff like that. It was a little quiet Methodist church. They didn't have a lot of that. And so I got involved with people who knew more about God than I did. And even though I sang about God and believed in him, tried to live the best I could as a Christian. I believed in all the laws of the Bible. I believed you shouldn't kill and you shouldn't lie and you shouldn't cheat and you shouldn't commit adultery. I believed all those things. I believed Jesus was the Son of God. But something kept like annoying me about it. Like why don't I cry when I talk about God? I don't feel that way about him. He feels very far away to me.
Right.
Even though I want to believe in him and I want to go to God in prayer about my problems, which I would do, I did not have what I felt was that thing that they had.
Right, right.
And so when I went to church one day, I said, God, what am I missing? And I think I began to have that prayer answered in the form of different radio broadcasts. Like, believe it or not, I used to listen to Pastor Raul Reese on a Chicago broadcast, a Christian radio station in Chicago. And I would hear him every single day. And he talked about the gospel and what it meant to live for Jesus Christ. And he was one of my mentors, though I never met him. Pastor Chuck Swindoll on the radio would teach me. There's a lady out of Chicago, Evangelist E.R. Allen. And lady preacher, I loved her. I was like, I want to be a lady preacher. and she would tell it. And she would tell about how she had prayed and delivered people from addiction and demonic possession and various, kind of ultra spiritual things I'd never heard about in my church.
Well, I think it's important to say because I was raised Catholic as well. So there was
Right.
that distance. There
Yes.
wasn't that real personal relationship to Jesus.
Yeah.
But I like what you said because you did have a perception of God. What was your perception of your heavenly Father, your godly Father at the time?
Yeah, it was fearful. I certainly had a perception of God as like a mad, angry God, mad, angry daddy who was waiting to bust you,
Right.
And
like a judge.
Yes. And I didn't have a lot of confidence in God that if I was a good girl, he would hear me, So
Right.
I lived by a set of rules that if I do the best I can, then God will be pleased with me. and we'll have a good life. Like,
Right.
And I believe that to a degree. I certainly believe that you have to live by the word, but I did not get the grace of God. Can we talk all day about that?
Because I think this is so important, is that grace of God. I
Yes.
had an opportunity to talk to, I'm in relation with a very close cousin of mine. He's like a brother to me. And he called me the other day, and he wasn't in the best state. But he said, you did not just talk about grace. You showed me grace and compassion. You never judged me in my position.
Yeah.
And I told him, you know what? It's because it's what God showed me through other people in my life. They were so graceful to me, and I was at my worst. How can I now not extend that grace to somebody, because I want that back? And you talk about it, and you called it a crisis of faith. And I love that. Tell us a little bit about your crisis of faith.
Well, I went through this trial, I guess, of my faith, where I started to question God, the Bible, Jesus, the devil, and just about everything I'd ever heard about Christianity in general. And it was like a war going on in my soul. And every single thought that came through my head was either about God, for God, or against him. And it was as if the devil and the Spirit of God were fighting for me. And I could recall having this instance where I wanted to believe in God, but I couldn't swallow some of the things in the Bible. Like, how do you make like a man float on water? How could Jesus have walked on water? How can that happen? I'd never seen a miracle. And I thought, those are not real. Those have to be fake. And there were other instances where I thought God was real, but then not as real as they made him in the Bible.
Right.
Like, because I've never seen anything like that. Why do they say these amazing things happen, but where are they now?
Right.
And then I had issues with God because of stuff that had gone wrong in my life, which is usually what we are really dealing with when we have doubt, right? And we have a bitterness about a pain or a trial or a hardship we've gone through. So in that crisis, I began to feel as though God was also challenging my beliefs. He was also telling me there were things I had in my belief system that were not right, and were not righteous, and that were coming out of a broken place, or like how I was taught, or something that did not line up with who he really was.
Right.
And then as I began to kind of give up, I remember hitting a point where I said, well, God, if you're not real, I guess I'm just going to live my life, because I don't know what to do. But if you are, can you just do something so that I will really have a faith that I can say that I know for myself?
Well, let's talk about that, because you had an opportunity to go to a youth camp. And this youth camp gave you a new perception on that relationship. You heard things like having to be saved, calling on Jesus, needing a savior. Tell us what that was like.
Well, and that was not just through the youth camp. There was a ministry in my high school called Youth for Christ. And they were just like a little weekly meeting. It was inter-school. There may be 200 kids there from every high school. And this gentleman by the name of Benny Simmons, he was my first pastor back in Gary, Indiana.
And that's amazing, because you remember all their names.
Oh, I do.
Absolutely. They were
Absolutely.
significant.
Very significant.
Okay.
And Benny was a mentor, because he would sit me down and talk to me about it in a way I'd never heard before. And I was a leader in my school, so I was an influencer. And I look back and I go, God wanted me to get my stuff straight, because people were listening to me, And he taught me a lot. And when I had doubts and fears and worries, and I don't know what's wrong with me, I don't know what I believe, he kind of held me together, him and his team, his ministers and his pastors, who were the overseers of this youth outreach, were a family to me. And as I got to the end of my rope with this battle, I laid in bed one night and just said, God, I don't believe you. I don't think I believe in you. And I said, but I want to. And
that is amazing, because God asks just that mustard seed of faith.
Yeah.
Just that mustard seed of faith. Some people come to Christ believing that they have to be perfect before God can accept them. And it's no. It's in my brokenness that God has come and revealed himself most, not when I'm having a good day. It's usually when I'm having a bad day.
Yes.
So you cried out to him, and he answered you.
He
because
did.
in the middle of your senior year, you were having a breakdown. You were confused.
Yes.
Tell us about this process of change, as you call it.
Well, it's a lot of what I was just describing, how my beliefs were out of line with what I believe God wanted me to know about him as a person. We don't even think of God as a person.
Right.
You know, we kind of think like he's this big force or he's like a light in the sky or what is he? And we don't even want to call him a he because we think, well, is it really a personal
Right.
situation here? Are we dealing with a force? Are we dealing with a spirit of this some wayward force in the universe, and we don't even know what his intentions are toward us. And God was there. I'll never forget the night I laid in that bed. And this was after all these months, like I described, all these months of confusion and doubt and back and forth. And what do I believe? And reading. I read books like The Cost of Discipleship. I read E.W. Kenyon.
So you were searching.
I was searching. I read Josh McDowell, Evidence That Demands a Verdict. I read, who's our favorite guy? C.S. Lewis.
C.S. Lewis.
You know,
Wow.
and I sought, I mean, you can tell I'm an intellectual. I sought this information because my brain was trying to convince me there was no basis for this reality.
Well, I think my father, he's a physics professor.
Yes.
He's very intelligent, very studious. But he always talked to me about faith and said there is a balance.
Yes.
He's a physicist because he searched for the truth,
Yes.
the basis of truth. But he said when it came to religion, having faith means that you might not have that answer. It's to believe blindly in something.
Yeah.
And I never forgot that because I was like, I don't need to always know what God is doing in my life. I just got to believe that he's there for me.
Right.
And if I allow that to happen, I will be able to get through my situation, get through my day, get through my month, get through my year.
Right. And I believe in apologetics. I believe there are plenty of biblical, historical, scientific, archaeological evidences for the Creator. He left evidence of himself in the
Right.
planet. However, that is not the basis of what makes you believe.
That's right.
Because the Bible doesn't say faith comes by seeing
Right. Or proof.
or proof, though that may help you.
Right.
You may have an instance where God does something to show you and it helps you believe. Faith is still always a matter of by the word of God. Faith comes by hearing. Faith comes when God speaks to the heart of a man.
That's right.
And you're connected in a way that you can't explain.
Exactly.
You can't explain that because it's not a realm we see in right now.
Right.
In the heavenly realms, we'll see that stuff. You can see things in
I
the
always
spirit.
explain it as being in love.
Yeah.
When you're in love, like the way I'm in love with Christ, nobody can tell me otherwise.
Right.
It's, you fall in love, especially as a young kid, and you think, I'm going to marry this girl. And your mom tells me, you're 13, you're 14. You're not going to marry this girl. It's just a phase. But nobody can tell me otherwise. I believe it at that time to my
Right.
core. And I think that's how faith is with me.
Yeah.
My love for him is just so believable in my heart that you can't tell me otherwise.
Right.
And that's what gets me through.
Well, and I say this, we are not aware as Westerners that there is another realm we don't tend to give credence to.
Right.
We don't give credence to the inner workings of the spiritual connection
spiritual realm.
of God to his children and even God to creation and how we even are interconnected with each other. Jesus knew the thoughts of people. That's odd in Western culture.
Right.
But in cultures where they understand spiritual dynamic, that's not odd. Right?
And
So
it's important. I'm glad
it's
you're
important to
mentioning
say
it,
that
yeah.
because we teach ourselves out of a part of ourselves that God wants us to hear him with and be led by his guidance, right?
Right.
But even that little thought we get to close the door, lock the door, don't forget your umbrella. Those little random thoughts come to us as guidance. And then you, of course, right, you go out and rain comes down. Oh my goodness, I had a thought, or I had an intuition.
Exactly.
I knew my baby was in trouble, etc. And so there's a space and time continuum where God is in a higher place than our eyes can see, but he's there.
Right.
Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. Heck, you can take an infrared camera and you can see light in this room that we can't see with our eye right now.
Right.
But it's not hocus pocus, it's real.
Right.
So we just live in a multi-dimensional world. We just can't see all of it.
And I think that's important to say because we don't talk a lot about the spiritual world.
Exactly.
But there is a connection for those who submit
Yeah.
that it's in your heart.
It's in you.
I don't even want to call
You're
it a
wired.
feeling.
You're wired for it.
Yeah.
But we don't tap into it. That's why we say we only use 10% of our brain,
That's
right?
right.
We're limited, and probably as we should be because we are fallen creatures. We're not as we were in the garden. We're in another space.
Exactly.
And now we're in grace, we're covered, but we're not the beings that he originally created
And
us
that's
to
the
be.
relationship that we're seeking for
Yes.
with Christ or in Christ.
Yes.
Well, I wanted to talk about, because you lost your luster for the world.
Yes. I was a teenager when I began to sense an emptiness with the partying, the drug and the drinking. And I'll admit that I am a teetotaler and always have been. But I lost that, I don't know.
Desire?
Yeah, like that innocence about it. I'd go to the parties, like I just like to dance. I'd go to the parties, but everybody's, getting high. I'm like, you guys aren't like me. I'm here to just be fun. And you guys are like wigging out on me.
Well, I feel that now because
Yeah.
I'm going on my 7th year of sobriety.
Yeah.
And, I get invited to a lot of events, and usually I stay away. But there's a couple of events that I've gone to lately, and I see them partying and drinking, and I can smell the marijuana in the air. And it's just
Right.
like, I want to come out and have fun, but this is just not
It's
my...
like ruining your...
Yeah,
right.
it's just not my kind of fun anymore.
Right.
And I actually have a disdain for it because I went through so much pain and hardship to
Yeah.
come out of it.
Right.
Now I have a disdain. It repulses me sometimes.
Yes.
And it's not to say that other people are
Not to
doing
judge,
yeah,
right.
that's their walk.
But it's just because of what you know it to
What
be.
I went through. Like,
Exactly.
So I understand what you were saying, because I love the word. You lost your luster for the world.
Uh-huh.
But he was calling you.
Yes, and it was unusual to be that age and to be
Yes.
so seriously religious in my family, because my parents, again, were not the most devout people, and they had a love for God that I would call nominal, and so there was a respect, you don't take the Lord's name in vain or something like that, but I was definitely a different sort of young person, and I had a call to evangelism. I would preach to my friends. I would leave the house and go out and talk to people on the street. It was just an unusual.
So you felt an anointing.
Absolutely. And I felt that right up until I left high school, and even into the beginning of the college years, but right up until I left high school. And then I think I got off, in a large part due to maybe being away from home, away from anybody I know. You're isolated. And so I tried to find friends and so on. And
so
that's why I
glad you're
think
saying that.
distraction can come in with a young person.
And I'm glad you're saying that, because that's what happens to a lot. That's what happened to me. I wanted to break away from my home at such a young age. At 17, I had a studio that I was running. I had my own students. I isolated myself, and I was in charge of myself. I was my own God. So I served nobody. I served myself. So I kind of, and at a young age, being immature, I ran with that. And of course, I had no tools,
Right.
no guidance. The guidance was discipline and structure, yes, but you party hard, but you work hard too.
Right.
Where that was gray area. It should have
Yes.
just been, that's wrong, and this is it.
Yeah.
My point is that being away, being disconnected from those
Yes.
people is what led me to start astray, because you
Yes.
had that same situation where you went to college
Yeah.
and you met somebody and got
Yes.
pregnant.
Yes, I did. I went actually through a series of heartbreaks that I'll share with you. I dated a guy just real briefly before I went back to school. Freshman year, I moved back home in the summer, then went back to school. So I kind of had a little summer romance, and this guy kind of broke my heart. And I said, well, I'm not going to let that get me down. I'm going to dive into my work and my school. And I was a theater major. So, I'm diving into dance classes, acting classes, music, and all my general eds, and work hard, audition for all the plays. I got involved with a music band and all kinds of things, just trying
So
to
you stayed busy.
stay busy, and figured it would keep me out of trouble. But, with a broken heart, you make bad decisions. And I think I dated a couple of different people who just weren't the right person, not terrible people, but just weren't the right person. And then I ended up with the guy who is my daughter's oldest dad, my oldest daughter's dad. And he was a cool looking dude, met him at the bar because I worked at a nightclub, big nightclub outside the college town. Huge. I mean, really, hundreds of kids would go on Friday, Saturday nights. And I was a waitress, and still was not a drinker, not a partier, but worked hard, always worked hard, and met the guy on my break. And we dated, and I think just one of those nights we had some alcohol, which, again, I always say this because I didn't normally drink. I think my guard was down. And so I tell this story, and I'm always so embarrassed when I say it, but like the first time I had sex, I got pregnant. I was 19, 19.
But I'm
And
I'm
and
happy you're saying
yeah.
that.
And so he says to me, "Oh, there's no way you got pregnant, that time." I'm like, "Well, all I'm telling you is I know that had to been it, And so what happened, we eventually parted ways. I found out, plus he I don't know if he'd mind me telling it, but he at the time had some issues with drugs, and I was not aware of that. So we parted ways, and I find out like 3 months later that I'm expecting a child. So I'm like, oh my God. Now this is my nightmare.
Oh yes, your world is crashing down right now.
And literally, I began to doubt whether I could live through the next 9 months, let alone recover from it.
Well, I can relate to that. I got sober for 2.5 years. I was alone for a long time. I met this beautiful girl at my studio. She was one of the parents of my students, and I started dating her. I was sober, had given my life to Christ, and I thought, this is it. I've been so faithful. I've been so good to you, Lord. This must be the person I'm to marry. And when things didn't work out, I was so devastated. I was so heartbroken. I couldn't believe it. But I didn't want to go diving back in. I had to say, God, you have this for a reason. It's for me to learn something. Well, come to find out, my 16-year-old daughter is pregnant right now. So I think he was teaching me something, that you got to walk in his faith, in his grace, to be able to give that grace to somebody else. And now my daughter. Now, she's not promiscuous. It was her first boyfriend.
Right.
Again, went too far and
Right.
got pregnant.
Right.
And now
And
I'm
it
living
only
that-
takes once. My daughter's 27, and I say,
So I
"Took
like,
me
I'm
once."
so happy that you're being so transparent, Rebecca, because you know what? A lot of people want to come off and speak off a pulpit or speak off a stage and say, look how perfect I am. Or look at the mistakes I didn't make. Instead of
Yeah.
talking about the mistakes you did and how God got you through. Because God's getting me through this. I've been
Yes.
alone now for over 10 months. And it is, I used to say a lot on the show, I'm so lonely. God has filled that spot for me right now. I don't date. I don't go out. If I do, friends, but at a distance. God will place it as
Yeah.
long as I'm faithful when he sees me ready, not when I think I'm ready. And that's
Right.
important.
Well, and
God placed
and
this
I
for
want
you.
to say that because that was exactly what I went through when I met my husband.
And that's what I wanted to mention.
We were dating as a result of meeting at my church, and to that end, I was in the very same predicament. Although now I was married, not married. I was a mother, but to that very same end, and then I was married when my husband, like he shared in his book, did something that I had to forgive him for. And so all throughout our lives, I say, God doesn't give you forgiveness as a lesson for no reason. There are going to be times in your life
That is great.
you have to forgive somebody. And he said, just as Christ and God has forgiven you, you forgive them. Why? Because guess what? You're going to need it. There's the magic eraser right here, because one day somebody is going to do something to you that's going to wipe you out. And if you don't let it go, guess what will happen to you? And so it's grace all around. It's grace to you, grace to me. And it just doesn't get any better than that. And it doesn't work if we don't.
You're right. It
Because
doesn't
what
work.
you hold poisons you, not the other person.
And this daughter of yours or this child of yours that you had is actually what brought you into that personal relationship with Christ, back to him, because you started attending church. You met your husband.
Right.
We don't have a lot of time, but share
yeah.
share on meeting your husband and what he was going through and how you guys came together. Because if you don't know, your husband is Terry
Yes,
Crews. He's
yes.
the actor. But
The now infamous, famous Terry Crews.
But it wasn't like that when you met him.
No, not at all. He was just my little college sweetheart and took on a mother with a baby at a young age, bless his heart. But he just loved me. And we got married young. We had about a 1.5 year engagement, and we got married by our pastor. And I always joke, Christians marry young because they're trying to hold out, so they're like, look, I'm going to take her to the aisle, down the aisle. I know this is the one, Lord. But we really did. I can say for myself, and he says as well, we did feel that this was God's will for us, that we did meet under a certain circumstance of the Lord's hand, and that there was a destiny for the two of us together, both being artists and all this, and both having dreams of affecting entertainment. And we seemed to merge in our life plan. And so here we are today, 25 years we've been married. Through the NFL and through Hollywood.
Wow.
So praise to God.
I'm
Yes.
going to be honest. Hopefully you bring hope to our audience and viewers, but you bring me a lot of hope.
Oh,
You bring me a
praise
lot
the
of hope.
Lord.
But when we come back, I want you to talk about God putting something back into your heart.
Yes.
20 years later, You've been a mother, a wife, and now a mother to a celebrity on the red carpet. When we come back, you're going to be performing live your song, Can I Stay in Your Presence. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Joy in My House. I'm in studio with Rebecca Cruz. We're going to come right back with a live performance you're not going to want to miss. This is Joy in My House. We'll be right back.
In the early dawn of day, he quietly slips away. A peaceful and humble man, he seeks his Father and prays. He's not God, so they say. He doesn't really hear. That's not so, he's just a prayer away for those who draw near. Emmanuel from Galilee. Emmanuel set the captives free. Emmanuel died on Calvary. Emmanuel, he died for me. He had no place to lay his head, a stranger in his own land. A man of sorrow took a grief, a king who died, a despised man. Compassionate high priest, the one who understands, made a way for you and me to hold the Father's hand. Emmanuel from Galilee. Emmanuel set the captives free. Emmanuel died on Calvary. Emmanuel, he died for me. On the cross and died for me. All I must do is believe. Emmanuel, he died for you and me. Emmanuel, he set the captives free. Emmanuel, died for you and me. Emmanuel, set the captives free.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Joy in My House, inspirational reality radio show with a touch of recovery. A reality radio show where nothing is left unsaid and no one who says it is insignificant. We're in studio with a live performance, Rebecca Cruz and her new single, Can I Stay in Your Presence. Ladies and gentlemen, let's introduce Rebecca Cruz.
When I'm in your presence, I can't breathe. When I'm in your presence, I can see into my future, where I'll be caught up in your presence eternally. Can I stay here with you? Can I stay here with you? Can I stay here with you in your presence? In your presence, in your presence. I feel your love flow to me. I am free. No, you won't desert me. You won't desert me, never leave. I am safe within your secret place, looking into your eyes, your face. Can I stay here with you? Can I stay? Can I stay here with you? Oh, can I stay? Can I stay here with you? Ooh, in your presence, where I wanna be. In your presence, where I wanna be. In your presence, Jesus, where I wanna be. Ooh. Thank you. Thank you
Ladies and
very
gentlemen,
much.
Rebecca Cruz, Can I Stay? And you can
Yes,
purchase
thank
her single that now dropped on RebeccaKingCruz.com. You can also find her on Facebook, Rebecca King Cruz. She's on iTunes,
Yes.
Amazon, and every digital music outsource out there. So I want you to find her, give her your support.
Thank
Rebecca,
you.
I got to ask you, what inspired you for that song?
Well, I wrote this song actually on the way home from a praise and worship rehearsal. I was worship leader of my church in West Covina, yay, Faith Community Church, Dr. Jim Reeve. And I was their, one of their worship leaders and the director of their choir. So you can imagine I was at church several nights a week doing this. And we had a rehearsal that was more like a worship service that night. And I came home thinking, wow, I don't want to leave. You know, can I stay? And I went, oh, that's a song. And that moment of inspiration,
Right.
that leaves you breathless, that leaves you feeling as if you can't move. You can't even, like time stops. That was the moment I wrote that song.
And that's so important because, especially as a new Christian for myself, when I get to that place, I do want to just stay there. I don't want to miss it.
Yes.
And for you, it was still challenging because you were submitting your music, you were writing.
Absolutely.
You're very disillusioned. But you had a close friend by the name of Derek and Sophia Look who confirmed this gift that God has given you to go out there
Yes.
and promote. Tell us a little bit about that.
I joke all the
experience.
time. She's my soul sister, and she calls me whenever I'm going through things without hearing from me, mind you. She hears from God, and she says to me, "Rebe, what are you doing with your music? Are you going to make your music?" And she asked me to come and sing for an event she threw for her family, and I sang for this event, and it just became the impetus, which I have that pardon me, that tape of me singing is on YouTube, and it became the impetus for making this record. So I owe her a whole lot because she always kicks me in my rear when I'm sitting on God's will, and I get going because of her. She's a blessing.
Well, because of that experience, people started asking you to perform for them.
Absolutely.
It was really God confirming this gift that you have to go out there and spread his word.
Yes, by all means. And it wasn't the only occasion. There were several after that even total, non-believers and strangers and other musical acts, and just one after another, probably 6 or 7 confirmations, in a short period that I said, oh my God, this just must be something I have to do. And I went right to work on it.
Because your album is going to be full length and it'll be coming out this fall.
Yes.
You're performing at the Bobby Jones Gospel Show August 1st, and it'll air in the fall.
Yes.
And you're also speaking in your hometown of Indiana.
Yes, I'm going to preach at my mama's church.
Wow.
Laurel Ministries in Northwest Indiana. And I'll be there with Tim Story and also with the pastor of that church, Dr. Vicky Raftery. And this is their women's, I believe it's a dream conference talking about living our dreams. And I'm excited. I'm very, very honored to be going back
Well,
home.
how amazing, because of your submission to God's will, when he prepared you, because you went through these challenges in your life, for this moment, for him to open the floodgates and bless you the way he is.
I'm overwhelmed, to tell you the truth. I'm extremely grateful. I thought that I would never get to do this, to be honest with you, and to see God restore something that has been so not lost, but way in the back, like way in the back of the closet, well, maybe one day, who knows? And for him to give me this gift and to allow me to break out with it is a tremendous blessing.
Well, that is amazing. Amazing. The premise of the show is a joy that we have in the midst of all of our challenges. We call it joy in our house. What would you say joy in my house means to you in today's day and age, Rebecca?
Can I be honest? When you say that, what I think of is my kids. I have a bunch, and and they're out at camp right now. They just went away today to go to sleepaway camp, and all I'm thinking is my house is not full of noise and little feet right now. And motherhood is a big part of my gifting and my call, and for me, that is family. That's the love of God through your mother, sister, friends, husband, and those kids. Who's in the house, but those people. And so that's what I think of with joy in my house.
Rebecca Cruz, thank you for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
Amazing.
Yay.
I want you guys to find her, RebeccaCruz.com. You can go to Rebecca Cruz /Facebook, become a friend.
Yes.
Like her page and receive all up-to-date lineups of guests and everything that she's doing. And you can buy her single on iTunes, Amazon, and all the music digital outlets out there. Join us next week live here at noon. Spiro, Celebrate Recovery Leader, will be giving a message on victory. We're going to close out with one of Rebecca's radio singles. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Joy in My House. You guys have a blessed day.
In your presence, I can't breathe. When I'm in your presence, I can see into my future, where I'll be caught up in your presence eternally. Can I stay?